Hey, this is Charlie Wilkins, the Amp Dude, and today our special guest is Dan Gower with Gower Amplification. Dan, how's it going with you today?
Doing good, thanks, man. And yourself?
Good, good. Thanks for coming on with me. I know that it's about 4 o'clock in the afternoon there. You're in the UK. I'm in Atlanta, Georgia, so I know this is kind of the end of your day, and you're probably getting ready for your Friday night. So I appreciate you coming on.
No, man, it's great. Thanks for having me.
Cool, cool. So, I've been watching your videos and all the stuff that you're doing on social media, Facebook, Instagram, and the stuff that you're doing with amp mods is unbelievable. It's fantastic, sounds great. And I was really anxious to kind of get you on this show and kind of pick your brain about what you're doing and how long you've been doing it. And on top of that, you're a great guitar player too. I've heard some of the, stuff that you've done, the John Sykes licks and the Gary Moore stuff, and I was kind of blown away by that. So awesome player too. So, how did you get started modding amplifiers? Where did this all start and what inspired you?
Well, thanks so much for the kind words, first off. I appreciate
Sure.
it. Um, I mean, I started playing guitar really young. I started playing around 6 years old, I think was when I first got into this. And I think from the very beginning, like what immediately drew me to the instrument was like I would hear stuff like Brian May or Gary Moore because like my parents liked a lot of rock stuff, and you'd hear this big aggressive wall of sound guitar jumping out of the speakers. And I think as a kid it just totally blew my mind when I heard this. You're 6 years old and you don't know what you're doing with the guitar or anything. I mean, I,
Right.
I think probably for a good few years before that, I was, jumping around the living room with a tennis
Air
racket,
guitar.
Yeah, exactly. Just imitating it because you're blown away with what you heard. So I got into it around, age 6, and then all the way through into my teens. That's when I got really heavily into it. Um, and I think there was always a big tone chasing aspect for me. I recognize it now, maybe I didn't at the time, and I could really hear a big difference in the sounds, and I could really recognize this stuff a lot. And it started quite early for me, going down the path of trying to get the right sound, the right everything, in the guitar rig to get the sounds that I grew up listening to.
Right.
So yeah, I got heavily into it, really obsessed. And I think when I was in my teens, that was like around the time when I started getting some good equipment. I got some good amps, but it
Like
was
what did you
always one
get?
of
Like
the
what kind of amps?
oh, so I think first off, I had the very first like proper one that I had was a carving.
Me too.
Maybe I think it was the X100B. It had the carpet cover in.
I had the same exact thing. I bought myself a Carvin half stack like around 86, 87, something like that. Same
Wow,
thing, yeah.
cool. Yeah, so I
X100B.
had that as the first one, and it was cool. It was like the first experience of hearing like a real loud head through a
Yeah,
4x12 and all
yeah.
that, and it got me hooked. But I was always looking for something more, and I think then I had like an Engel. Uh, I had an Engel Powerball at one time, which was cool. It was great. I got down the path of like the Mesa Boogie Mark series
Yep.
heads, and I think that's at the point where I suddenly started to get closer to what I liked.
Yeah.
And I realized a little bit later on that a lot of the players that I grew up really worshipping were guys who used Monty Marshalls. And then it was like, as soon as I then got a little bit of knowledge about that stuff, it was like light bulb moment. All of a sudden I was honed in exactly on where I wanted to be. Um, so I had a few different amps that were modified and all of that stuff, and they were really cool. I bought a few from the States from some different techs and stuff, and I loved them at the time. But it was all like a stepping stone along the way. I was finding my way and finding what I liked, and eventually I had inherited a JCM 800 that was a 50 watt, and it just didn't really sound very good. And for years, I had it there. I was just always thinking, man, I would so love to be able to make that thing sound like mind blowing. And years went by, and I was like learning. I was really doing a lot of like studying online through forums, through books, through everything I could find, anything I could find about how amps worked inside. And I really did the deep dive. I went head first down the rabbit hole.
So
And
did you have a excuse me, did you have a background in the electronics, as you started doing it?
no,
Oh, okay.
no, I
Wow.
didn't have any background in it. I did know how to do like soldering, and I was quite handy. I was quite a handy person with that sort of stuff. I could already work on my own gear and swap pickups and things, but before getting deep into it, I wasn't super like clued up on that stuff. But I learned each step of the way, and that particular amp ended up being like a test bed as I was learning. So I pulled everything out from the inside. I put in like a new board, and bit by bit, like I started out from scratch, and it was very primitive at the beginning. It was like, okay, let's see what happens if I change that part, and does it work? Does it blow up? Whatever. You kind of find your way like this, and it
Yeah.
was it was it was a lot of fun. And Yeah, bit by bit, I started getting closer and closer to what I like to hear, and yeah, as I say, like going through that, studying a lot, learning a lot more about how this stuff works. I started to get a good grasp of how to do this. But it wasn't really until probably around like '09 or 2010 that I kind of then really leveled up with this, because I basically had a mentor in another amp builder, Mike Fortin.
Oh yeah.
And Mike, like we had a mutual friend through the internet, so we became kind of like almost like email pen pals. We were talking about stuff and amps and everything, and he kind of took a sort of like took a liking to me, and we got on really well. And he kind of from that point on showed me a lot of things that he'd learned along the way, and he's seen everything. I mean, it's amazing.
Oh
So
yeah.
he taught me a lot over the course of several years, and from that point, I mean, it just it just went into a whole different level. So we ended up coming up with some ideas. He kind of paved the way a lot, and then I did a lot of the test bed work. I was doing a lot of the R&D, that kind of thing, and we came up with a circuit. And as soon as I made sound clips of this thing, I posted it on some forums. And I mean, I didn't expect anyone to do anything more than say, "Oh, nice job," kind of thing. And within 1 week, I had a list of people asking, "Hey, where can I get this? Like, can you do it for me?" And it was just everything just changed at that point. It was incredible.
That's amazing. So Mike didn't have a problem with you kind of, going off and doing your own little thing there?
Well, at the time, he was I think he was working for Yamaha, and he was doing this on the side, and he was doing his own amp line. So
Got
like
it.
he basically said, you know what, you do the stuff for the European guys and the UK guys, and I'll do the stuff for the Americans and Canadians. So this was great. It was really cool, and it really opened the door for me. This was like a big stepping stone. Without that, it would have been a lot harder to get into this world. Yeah, he really paved the way for me and took me under his wing, which was so cool. And then a little bit later on after that, he stopped doing mod work because he became the Randall designer.
Right.
And then he kind of passed everything mod wise to me. So I got everything from everywhere, basically. Worldwide, people were coming to me. And it was really, yeah, it was an amazing feeling. It just, yeah,
Oh,
from there, it just,
great story. So
yeah.
do you aspire to, go into full production at some point and, sort of build your own amp from the ground up and, get something that's, more mass produced?
Yeah, I definitely have intention to do that. It's something that I'd like to be doing over the next few years. Um, and it's one of those things. I think when you're someone like me who's constantly playing with designs and playing with ideas, you're kind of like never 100% set on one thing. And like you're always like,
Yeah.
oh, maybe I can just get it a little bit better. And but sooner or later you've got to commit to it and do that. So this is definitely something that I'm planning to do, hopefully in the near future. So For now, I have to be honest, the demand for the work I've been doing has been really really strong. It's I'm never out of work. It's constant.
Wow. So is this
So
your main gig now? Do you do this full time?
full time. It's been full time for a while actually.
Yep, yep. So this is your main gig. You've been doing it full time for a while.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. The demand's been really high, and yeah, I've the work has always just come in constantly. So I never had to advertise or market this or anything. It was really like word of mouth or through forums or other places. And I guess social media is such a powerful thing now.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
reaches so many people. So
So are you a one man operation or do you have other people helping you?
just me. Yeah.
Wow.
So yeah, just me doing it. But it's cool. Yeah, I it's one of those things where yeah, it's a lot of work to do, but I love the job. You know,
Of
for
course
me,
you
this
do.
is a dream come true.
Of
So
course. So
yeah,
when do you have time to play when you've got all this demand?
yeah, it's actually it's tricky. You know, it's quite a balancing act. Sometimes if things are crazy busy for a while, I'm not playing as much, and but then I then go through phases of really making up for it. So it's one of those things you just have to get in some shred time whenever you can fit it in.
Exactly.
Late at night, first thing in the morning with your coffee. Lunch hour, whenever, whatever it takes, really.
Yeah, for sure.
So,
So Marshalls are obviously your go-to amps for mods. What Marshalls do you like? And which Marshalls do you not like?
so I'm a big fan of everything, really, like from the very beginning of Marshall,
Yep.
all the way through to, I would say, up to like the JCM 800s. I like some of the 900s, but there's a specific model that I like out of those, which is the SLX.
Really?
That one's cool.
Yep.
I don't really like the other 900s very much, um, but yeah, to modify it, I mean, I always think that the early 80s JCM 800s, or I should say like the vertical input model
Yep.
2203 or
Yep.
2204 model, they're just such a great platform to work on because you've got a big open chassis, there's loads of rooms. So like many times if I'm doing mods that involve extra tube gain stages, clean channels, effects loops, I mean, I'm putting like 6 tubes in the amp or 7 tubes in the amp, plus all this other stuff. So I really need the space like to do all of that. So those are a really good choice. But the actual outcome in the end, the sound, whether it be like a 60s, 70s, 80s era Marshall, I do so many changes to the circuit that I feel like I can greatly influence the end result to be quite similar. So many times customers will say to me, hey, does it have to be like a really old one, or can it be like a mid 80s 800? And I usually just say to them that, look, I'm going to be doing so much fine tuning that I'm not going to sign this thing off until I'm like happy that I could go out and tour with the thing. So I'm looking for a specific sound. I know in my head exactly what I'm aiming for, and it doesn't leave the bench until it meets that point. So
Yep. So do you work
yeah.
closely with your customers to sort of dial in and tweak it and until they get the sound that they want, or do you have, a specific mod and you say, hey, this is what it is?
Well, it depends because there's different customers who are differently involved with this stuff. So there's customers who will contact me and they'll say, "Hey, I've heard sound clips of the Rock Monster mod, which is one of the ones I do, or like the Killer Cali," and they'll say, "That sound, I just want that. Do it with that with an effects loop. I trust you to do it that way, and it's going to sound like I heard in the clips." In those cases, I'm doing it the way I always do. Then you have customers who are really way more involved and they know what they're looking for, and there's something special, there's something different. And they might be looking for a slightly different response or a different top end or a different mid-range. And usually those guys they've got quite a clear idea of what they're after. And then it's up to me to translate through. Most of the time it's not in technical terms, it's usually musician terms. Oh, I need some like that more organic mid-range, or I need the tone to be more woody, or like what does that mean in
Translate that.
technical?
Yeah.
Yeah, what does it mean in technical terms? But over years of doing it and being a guitarist, I feel that I've got really good at translating that kind of info when people tell me this stuff. So it's it's good for me then because I've got something to work with, and I'll often say, what else have you used in the past? What did you like? What did you hate? Um, there's characteristics. I've got a lot of experience with many other amps, so I know if someone gives me a reference point of what they've liked and disliked, it helps me to know, okay, yeah, maybe they prefer darker sounding amps or brighter sounding amps or, that kind of thing. So yeah, it sometimes the customers are really heavily involved, which is great. And this is probably my favorite way to work because I like to tailor it to the player. For me,
Right.
it's a really fun thing for me. It's really fulfilling.
So do some guys come to you and say, hey, I wanted to sound like this artist or that artist. I wanted to sound like, John Sykes or I wanted to sound like George Lynch. Or, you get a lot of that.
Very much, yeah. That's probably one of the most common things, because I often say, hey, if it's easier for you to give me some references, perhaps famous songs, albums, things that you like the sound of, I can dig into that and see what those artists actually used and how that sound was achieved, and then I can recommend what's the best way to go about achieving that,
Got
which
it.
is cool.
And
And I've already been down that avenue myself as a tone chaser. So many times, like I've already gone that road of like trying to imitate a particular sound or a player. And so I can like kind of bring that up quickly. Oh, you need that, or you need this, or
right.
yeah.
So will you do anything, other than Marshalls? I mean, if somebody comes to you, with a Carvin or with a Vox or something like that, will you give it a shot?
Absolutely, yeah. I've modified tons of other stuff over the years.
Okay.
I've had everything from Soldanos, Bogners, Friedmans, um, Vox, Mesa Boogie, um, so many different things over the years. PVs, EVH amps. I
Right.
mean, I've modified so many of them. It's like, I would say like people probably know me more for doing the Marshall thing because that's the main thing I focus on the most. But
Right.
I've worked on so many other things over the years, and it is fun to do other stuff too. It's really refreshing. You also get to sometimes try things that you didn't maybe try yourself already, and that's really
Right.
really fun. You get to experience new amps and tones and things like that, which I love.
Are there any amps that you just stay away from? Somebody comes to you and says, "This is what I have," and you're like, "No, I don't
Mm.
touch those."
Yeah, I mean, maybe some of the stuff that just really doesn't lend itself to being modified. I mean, things like if you take like a Boogie Road King or something like that, where it's just a
Yeah.
million things
Yeah.
going on inside. I'm kind of the opinion of like, well, there's probably a few good sounds in that already. Let's just leave that one be, let it be its own thing. But generally, most of the time, if it's something that I already think, this sounds good, this has got potential, then I'm usually happy to get my hands dirty and see
Yeah.
see what I can do with it, which is cool.
Yeah. So who are some of the notable musicians that you've worked with?
So, I mean, in more recent years, I've done a lot of work for Andy Sneap from Judas Priest,
Yeah.
and that's been really, really a lot of fun. He discovered my work through another artist that I worked for previously, and yeah, I ended up doing over the last 3 years. I must have done probably 8 or 9 amps for him, I guess,
Oh,
something like
really?
that. Yeah, and like two of those are his main live touring rig with Judas Priest. They toured the world with these things, and
Yeah.
night after night, he's playing those amps in front of huge arenas and stadium crowds and stuff. So that's been really incredible. I've done some amps also for Richie Faulkner from Judas Priest.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, I did those. I recently did an amp for George Lynch.
Oh, you did.
Um,
Wow.
yeah, I did one just recently. It was
Pretty
a little
cool.
bit earlier this year, and that was really cool. He's another one of the artists that I really looked up to and
Too.
still look up to.
Yeah. Yeah. What was the feedback that he gave you?
Well, he uses like a plug-in module.
Yeah,
Legendary Tones. David is the one who makes those, and David is a good friend of George's, and he contacted me on George's behalf, and he was saying that George had heard like great stuff about the amps and everything, so he wanted to get one worked on, and I did it all and sent it out to them, and basically when George came to David, and they were testing out some amps to use for some shows. Apparently, like they blind tested it more or less, and he heard it and was like, "Okay, that's the one I'm touring with."
oh,
So that's what I was told by David. So
that's great.
yeah, as far as I know, I think he's still using it on the road now. So he's loving it.
That's awesome. Yeah, I know he goes through a lot of different amps, and every time you see him, he's playing something different. And
Yeah,
yeah, he's got a very discerning ear. So that's cool that George Lynch took a huge interest in your stuff. I mean,
yeah. He's another tone chaser.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Absolutely. Absolutely. What was my
Great.
next question here? What do you think about modeling amps?
I actually like modeling amps. I've always had the opinion that they serve a great purpose. The Kempers, the Fractal, the Tonix, all those kind of things. They're all serving a purpose where guys that can't take real amps out on the road, guys who are playing tours where they are on a tight budget. I know, I know enough guys who do that for a living and how hard it is and how expensive it is to do this. And I know full well that it would cost a fortune to be taking out 100-watt heads everywhere. And
Yeah, yeah,
so my feeling is that using the modeling stuff for that purpose, it's great. It's a good thing. I do have a personal preference of how I like to use one. I always feel that it's way better if you feed that through a backline. It's great,
yeah,
obviously, running it
yeah,
through the PA as well, but if you run it through a backline, through a good tube power section into a 4x12, it just feels so much better for the audience. I feel there's air is being moved like a real amp. You've got all the advantage of having the sound in the box that you already like, but you can take it in a suitcase or so I think that stuff's really great. And I mean, I've got a Kemper myself. I've been playing around with profiling and doing some stuff, and that's definitely something that I'll play around with more and expand upon. But yeah, I think if it's like a necessary thing, then it's probably the best option in that scenario.
yeah.
Um,
Got it.
because otherwise, if you end up having to rely on a random backline every different show you play, this can be really risky. You never know what you're
Yeah.
going to get.
Yeah, a lot of guys are
So
saying that it's just a lot more cost effective and they like the sound. I personally think that it's kind of a trade-off.
yeah,
I know what you're saying about having a backline, some sort of tube power amp, to push air and whatnot. And, I guess one of the issues that I've always had with amp modeling is that it doesn't push that air, it doesn't breathe like a tube amp, you know.
no, it's more enclosed, it's more
Yeah.
compressed. Doesn't have the air and the dynamics to it.
Right.
I totally agree. It's missing that part. It's a handy thing to have if you really don't have another option.
Yeah.
But I think if you've got the option to play a great amp, no brainer.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
the real amp will always win.
Yeah, and I understand what you're saying about consistency in tone from night to night. That's a huge deal. The cost of bringing your backline out on the road, that's huge. I'm a huge Queensryche fan, and I know on their last couple of tours they're using Kempers, and I was kind of blown away by that. I was like, man, you got to be kidding me.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
I get it.
yeah. I saw them on tour. Maybe I don't know whenever it was the last time they were in Europe, and yeah, they had Kempers. It was very like pristine sounding in the room.
Yeah,
It's maybe a little bit sterile, but
yeah,
it was cool. I mean, obviously they're known for that really overproduced thing anyway. So for them, maybe it's more suitable than say if you were in an AC/DC style band, where it just really wouldn't cut it. So
yeah. You don't need a big, huge, Def Leppard type rack or anything like that in a
no,
box. So yeah, I get it. Definitely get it.
yeah, yeah. I think it's all dependent on the gig, the style of music, and the application. It can be cool.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
But I'm a diehard amp guy though, through and through, you know.
So am I. I've tried a lot of different, modeling amps and this, that, and the other, and I think they're great for recording, but for live, I just have, I need to have that interaction with a tube amp, and
Yeah.
got to be cranked up. Can't be a low volume. It's got to be master's got to be up all the way with anything that I play. I don't care what it is. You know.
Yeah, totally. I always think it brings out a different side to you as a player because
Yeah,
if you've got the air pushing behind you from the cabinets, this does things to the dynamics, the way you play. You can't just like play around softly on that, and you have to be able to control it. There's
right.
so much more to it. I think there's a whole technique. There's a whole range of techniques really that you have to get down perfectly if you're going to play a loud amp. Um,
Absolutely, 100%. Yeah.
it's otherwise it will play you. It's like it will just feed back and scream, and but if you can harness that, it's a force to be reckoned with.
Yeah, many many years ago, a buddy of mine plugged into one of my Marshalls, and he said, "Man, this thing is like really really hard to play." I was like, you've got to learn how to play a Marshall. You don't just plug
Yeah,
into it. You have to learn how to play the amplifier too." And he didn't
definitely.
understand that, but yeah, you do.
Yeah, you do. I think the thing is, every amp has a certain feel and response to it, which is a big thing, isn't it? If you play a very clean sounding Marshall, like a Plexi that maybe isn't quite as gained out as you're used to, you're probably going to play more staccato. You're going to have to dig in more.
Absolutely.
But you can't quite do the smooth legato thing so easily with a rig like that.
Yeah, you really got to be able to play. You got to have your chops
Yeah,
up.
so that the heavy right hand always helps.
Yeah, absolutely. I like Gary Moore. He's very, very heavy-handed.
Yeah, absolutely, like beats the strings off the thing, and also like Philip Sace, he's another
Yeah.
guy who
Oh
just
man. Yeah.
beats the hell out of the guitar.
Ridiculous. Yeah.
Yeah, but that sound, that's where it comes from.
Yeah.
It's an amazing thing. But it's yeah, I think that's again, it's something that with certain rigs, you've got to find the kind of guitar rig that matches the way you like to play too.
That's true. Very, very true.
That's a big thing, like with my mods, I'm always trying to find the right balance between that that kind of balanced feel where you can do legato stuff comfortably.
Yeah.
It's not like overly flattering. It's not like, mushy where it's like you can get away with everything, but it feels really good, really responsive. But then, if you want to pick hard and you want to dig in, it can keep up with you. This is a big factor for me, because I like to go between those dynamics. If you hear guys like John Sykes, he'll go from being very smooth and very flowing in his playing to suddenly really staccato. And you've got to have a rig that keeps up with that. So that's a big thing for me when I'm trying to voice amps for guitar players.
Absolutely. All right, we're kind of running out of time here, so I got a couple more quick questions for you. If you could design an amp for any musician, past or present, who would it be?
It probably would be John Sykes.
John Sykes. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean he's like my hero. So yeah, probably would be John Sykes. Yeah, the guy's just got it all, hasn't he? Really, it's
You know,
just
I was gonna say I just saw a clip of you playing some John Sykes stuff earlier today, and your amp was like nailing that sound. So,
oh,
man,
thank you.
yeah, I think that he would love your amps.
Probably you can probably hear a lot of that because the sound in my head when I'm voicing amps, obviously there's a lot of that there. So it's bound to go in that direction, but probably also just playing along to those songs for so many years. I mean,
Yeah,
it
yeah,
just gets burned into your bones at that point, doesn't it? You pick up a guitar and that kind of a sound comes out naturally at that point. So
absolutely,
yeah,
absolutely.
yeah, I love that stuff.
So, one more question here. So, what's next for Gower Amplification? Do you have any projects that are in the pipeline? Anything that you're working on?
Well, I'm always working on new things. I'm always working on new designs, coming up with stuff. I think previously it's just the amount of demand that there's been. I've always been so busy because one order comes in immediately after the next. There's never like a downtime.
Yeah.
But next year I'm going to actively make time. to do more. I want to put out some new designs, some new mods. I've got some ideas maybe for the amp modeler world.
Wow.
Um, I'm also thinking a little bit about some pedal designs as well. So I'm looking at diversifying things a little bit. You know, adding some more cool things to the range. So yeah, I think next year is going to be a fun year of doing a lot more of this and offering new cool things.
Awesome. Can't wait to see what you come up with. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Hey, do you
gonna
ever
be
make it
it's
out to the
gonna be
NAM
good.
show in LA?
I've never been. I'll have to make it out at some point. But yeah, I've never actually been to Nam before.
Got it. Yeah, you got to come check it out, man. I went there last year for the first time, or actually this past January, and it was a great time. Ran into a lot of cool people, a lot of my guitar heroes, and
Yeah,
cool. So yeah, you got to make it out there sometime.
yeah, it's got to be the best for networking.
Yeah, absolutely. 100, 100. All right, Dan. Well, we are out of time here. Thanks for coming on, man. I really appreciate it. Good luck with everything that you're doing. Your mods, they sound great, sound fantastic, and you're playing obviously very awesome. So, good luck with everything, moving forward, and hope you have a great 2025. And man, we'll be in touch.
Thanks so much, mate. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
All right, thanks, and enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thanks, mate. You too.
All right,
Take
thanks.
care.
All right.
Cheers.